Sifter for the ear.
News, interviews, reviews, cinema, TV, streaming. Action.
Hi, y'all. This is Jerry Williams, a.k.a. TV Jerry. The latest project from the Richmond Film Network is Sonic Storytelling, Sync, Scores, and Songwriting for Cinema. It'll look at creating soundtracks for independent films, including sync licensing, scoring, and songwriting, from 3 experts, Ellis Williams, Stephen Schneider, and Doe Eyes. It'll be held at 6 p.m. Wednesday, August 27th at Harry's Library at the Hoff, and I'll have a link to it on the webpage for this show at tvjerry.com.
They were great to work with. I did at some point, though, a lot of these kids were, believe it or not, born in the year 2010 or later. So I realized in rehearsal that me and a person born in 2010 have 0 shared pop culture reference points. So
Exactly.
I did ask when we were in Richmond if the kids would watch Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the Mike Nichols film.
Wow. That was Nicholas Collier, writer-director of Griffin in Summer, talking about how he prepared the young actors for the play they'd be staging in the film. It's a coming-of-age comedy that follows Griffin, a 14-year-old aspiring playwright, Everett Blunck, who's trying to bring his ambitious artistic vision to life while becoming enamored by his mom's handyman. It was shot in Virginia in 2023 and stars Melanie Lynskey as Mom and Owen Teague as the handyman. It also won the Founders Award for Best U.S. Narrative Feature at last year's prestigious Tribecca Film Festival. And Nicholas has some great stories to share.
Sifter Review of the Week.
The Hunting Wives on Netflix. When Peyton Place came out in 1956, it was considered shocking for its sex, scandal, murder, and more. Ever since then, writers have been upping the stakes on salacious, sensational stories. This new series ups the ante to include lots of shocking secrets set in a rich conservative Texas community. The East Coast sensibilities of a new resident from Boston, Brittany Snow, are challenged at every turn. A bigwig's beautiful, powerful wife, Malin Ackerman, befriends her and introduces her to their gun-toting, hard-drinking ways. They're also spiteful and full of gossip, which leads to lots of juicy portrayals. Tossed in a murder mystery, which could have been done by half the people in the cast. Through all the gossip and spiteful interactions, there are sexual variations to keep it surprising. The one adjective that best describes this series is trashy. The actors all do fine, and it's well-paced, but it's all about trying to be entertainingly shocking, which it does with deliciously devilish delight. I gave The Hunting Wives 3 out of 5 stars. Nicholas Collier, welcome to Sifter for the Ear, and congratulations on Griffin in Summer.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Now, of course, the first thing I have to ask you, because as I shared with you, I was doing plays when I was a kid. I actually had puppets, too, because I couldn't always get actors for them. Was Griffin kind of inspired by your own life experience?
Part of it. It's not my autobiography. None of the big events that happened at Griffin at 14 happened to me at 14, and his home life and his family life was not mine. But I definitely did spend all of my adolescent summers making film and theater out of my parents' basement. I wasn't a playwright, and I was, the director, but I was always more interested in comedy than Griffin is. But it was still, 13, 14-year-olds in bad wigs, drinking fake martinis, talking about their divorces. So that kind of kids playing adult element was that I had in common with Griffin.
Yeah, well, that precociousness that he writes throughout the script is something I want to talk about later. The big thing about this movie, the most important aspect, is these young actors. Not only Eric, who plays Griffin, but his 3 friends who act in the plays with him and for him. Casting them, how complicated and how many kids did you have to go through to find these kids?
Yeah, it was the biggest part of the whole pre-production process. Meredith Tucker and Betsy Fippinger are our casting directors. They had done the movie 8th grade, so they had experience with kids in this age range. And really, they had said to me, it's our favorite thing to do to find, unknown, maybe slightly unpolished kids in this age range. I was like, well, this is the perfect film for you then.
Right.
But for the Griffin role, it was about, I think that they looked at about 450 kids.
He did have some screen experience.
He did, but he didn't. Everett had acted, and he's had a lot more since we made the movie, but he's acted in local westerns and stuff. But, a couple lines here or there. He did not have a reel, and we did not get in contact with him through an agent. So of those 450 kids we considered for Griffin, some of them came just through traditional agencies. And some of them was just us reaching out to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of youth theaters who then would refer us to kids who then, maybe out of every 10 kid, one kid was good enough to audition. So
Right.
we found Everett actually out of a youth theater in Bozeman, Montana. And then the other kids were more traditionally through agents and not as huge of a search. The Griffin search was a good 6-month process.
He's on almost every scene, so he had to be ideal.
Yeah.
So now it's interesting because I've worked with kids when I was a director too. And one of the things that was also so interesting is you created that rapport between them and bad acting. How do you teach kids to be bad actors? I mean, intentionally, they were supposed to be
Right.
funny bad, not terrible, but
Right.
obviously awkward kids. How do you do that?
Yeah, it was an interesting line. Luckily, all of the kids who we cast are, great actors from Everett down. And so I think they understood the distinction. And we had a good 3 days of rehearsal with the kids, which, in film land is pretty
Right.
luxurious.
It's
And
rare,
so
yeah.
I mostly was rehearsing them. And we just talked about more that the kids, similar to like Griffin, I think it thinks that the best writing is kind of like the most writing. I think
Right.
that with the kid actors, they think that, indicating and yelling and is the best. But they were great to work with. I did at some point, though, a lot of these kids were, believe it or not, born in the year 2010 or later. So I realized in rehearsal that me and a person born in 2010 have zero shared pop culture reference points. So I
Exactly.
did ask when we were in Richmond if the kids would watch Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the Mike Nichols
Oh,
film,
wow.
just so we had some common reference point, not even to impersonate it, because, otherwise I'd be saying things like, oh, in this moment, it's like a soap opera, and they don't know what a soap opera is. So they did all watch that, and that was very funny.
Wow. And I have to tell you a quick story about my own experience with Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I discovered the play when I was in high school. I got a copy of the recording and listened to it like you listen to a regular album. And then when the movie came out with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, I wanted to go see it, but I was too young. And so I combed my hair back, tried to make myself look older, went up to the box office, and she said, "May I see your ID?" And of course I was like, ugh. And I had to go home and get my mom to get me into the theater.
Surprise guest drop-in.
And I want to ask you more about Everett in a minute and some other things, but since you did shoot it here in Richmond, somebody dropped in to welcome you from Richmond here. What is this surprise? Danny, hello there.
Danny, what's up?
Hi, friends.
Footnote.
Danny Caprioletti is a writer-filmmaker based here in Virginia. Danny, what was your involvement with Griffin in Summer?
Well, I was the assistant director, Jerry, and it was a blast. It was a great project. I loved working with Nicholas, and I'm excited that the film's coming out very shortly.
We talked a little bit before you signed on about the kids and how amazing they were to work with. What were some of the experiences you had on the movie with working with them or with working with anybody or in general?
The kids are amazing. I don't remember a time they ever dropped a line, right, Nick? I mean, they literally
No.
were on it the entire movie, and they were hilarious. They were professional. They were energetic. A real joy to work with on every level.
What was it like for you working on this, since it's bringing in people from all over the country to make the movie, obviously, and you're a Richmonder here?
I'm a champion of all things happening in Virginia. Making movies in Virginia is what we're all about. And Nicholas and the rest of the production team making the movie here for kind of a variety of reasons was just a stroke of luck for myself and a lot of other crew here in town. It was a 20-some day shoot in July and August, but Nicholas wrote a great script where a lot of it happened inside a house, which allowed us to not be out in the elements. And it was a very exciting project from start to finish. We're relatively smooth, I'd say, too. Wouldn't you say, Nick?
Yes, we were so, and I remain so grateful to Danny because he was, for people who don't know, the AD is very much who works the schedule and keeps the schedule. And we were not 20-ish days, we were only 20 days. And with kids this age, you can only work them 9 hours, and including lunch, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I might be wrong about that. And then Everett's in every frame. So in order, Danny just was a very invaluable in terms of just scheduling the shit out of this and just really squeezing every drop out of every day. And I would say with the two, no, this is not false modesty, so I'll just take myself off the table. But yeah, I would say Danny and Everett, who was the lead, if they weren't as unbelievable as they were. And so I can't imagine how we would have made the film that we made in the time that we did.
Terrific. You got any good stories for us, Danny?
One thing that I remember very fondly, Nick, is the process of location scouting to find the theater that we ended up
Mhm.
using for the play. We saw a bunch of places that were real community theaters, places
Right.
that in and around Richmond that I bet you're familiar with. I mean, we looked at like the Glen Allen Arts Center. We looked at all these very, places that were true theaters.
Right.
And I remember a discussion at one of those locations with Nick and our DP Felipe, who was incredible, about what's the right vibe of this theater. And we went into this like banquet hall that was not a theater. And Nicholas was like, well, this is where I would have done the show, is this
Ah,
type of space. I remember Felipe being like, well, maybe we need to be looking at a different type of place. And lo and behold, the place where we ended up shooting was a church with a very small sort of stage that we created. Our production designer Maria kind of created this amazing space. That was such a perfect space that we almost got accidentally at the 11th hour, and it felt like we were going to be shooting in a much more traditional theater space. And I was really glad that we didn't. I felt like it fit the movie and the sort of DIY vibe of Everett and all of his cast in a way that was right.
where was that? Or are you allowed to say?
It was a church in Northside. The name is escaping me. And we spent 2 days there, I think, for all those scenes, which was
Yeah.
insane that we did everything in those 2 days.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was perfect. And it was a weird line that we were always walking where I felt very strongly that I wanted the film to feel authentic to what this play would actually look and sound like and all that. And there are a lot of films about kids doing theater or community theater and films that I love. But as soon as you get to the theater portion of it, it becomes clear that there's a whole professional production design
Right,
budget and
right,
stuff.
yeah. While we're on the subject of locations, the basement of the house where a lot of the show goes on, was that actually a basement of a house, or did y'all use a more flexible space and make it look like a basement?
A great question. The house we found was perfect house for production, but it did not have a basement.
Aha.
So we essentially turned this like rec room off of the garage area to look like a basement. And there's a couple of angles where we did some set design and some stuff to that room to make it feel more like a basement. It was also like a much bigger room than I think a lot of other basements might have been able to afford us.
Yeah, that was just kind of luck, or I don't know if it was entirely luck, but it felt very lucky because, I thought all that the house in my mind needed to have was a finished basement and a pool. And apparently in Richmond, that's not super common to have
Yeah.
both for
Right.
some reason. So yeah, this house it was really lucky. It had this room behind the garage that had kind of a basement feel that also had a staircase leading up to a different weird
Very
wing of the
convenient.
house.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
so
what
it was very
yeah.
easy. I don't know if we should be giving away all these secrets, but it ended up being easier so we didn't have to schlep up and down stairs, but I wanted it to be a basement. So yeah, it worked out great.
Danny, any other story before we let you go?
There was really no moments on this set other than a couple of like late nights where the crew's just tired. But even those, because of what Nicholas said, it was a very manageable schedule because of the kid hours.
When
Yes.
am I gonna see you soon, I hope?
Soon, yes, we're working out the details for sometime in the next month for a little Richmond premiere.
Yes.
So we can't wait for that.
Terrific.
Yes,
Terrific.
I'm excited.
Danny, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jerry. Talk soon, man.
Bye-bye.
Yes, talk soon.
Bye, guys.
That was so fun.
Oh, I'm good. I'm glad you like that. Before we move off of Everett, he calls his mother Helen. Speaking of which, that was Melanie Lynskey. So obviously she's a get for the movie.
Footnote.
Melanie Lynskey is probably best known for her lead as Shauna in Yellow Jackets, but she's been in numerous other great roles, including The Last of Us, 2.5 Men, and a bunch of movies. How did you get her? Was she just willing to do it? Did you have to work hard? Or how did you go about getting Melanie Lynskey committed to this?
Getting Melanie in the movie was bizarrely the easiest part of the process for
Wow.
a film where nothing has been easy at all. The producer, Juliette Berman, was the first person to come onto the film, and then she had a relationship with Meredith Tucker, the casting director, and, they asked me, okay, well, let's attach the mom first, and I was like, well, my first choice is Melanie Lynskey, but she's...
The big deal, yeah.
And even this was now summer 2022.
Yellow Jackets was already out by then, right?
Yeah, Yellow Jackets was out. Meredith and Juliet had a relationship with Melanie's agent, Rhonda Price, who's also been a huge champion of the film. And Melanie read it and had committed like a week later. And then remained committed because we ended up not shooting for another year. So
Oh, wow.
I had a full year of being like, I'm being told Melanie Lynskey's in this film. I think it's happening. People keep telling me it is, but I didn't really believe it until... Maybe I still don't believe it, but I'm extremely grateful to her. She's been Has been and continues to be so generous with me and the film and on set and her time, and she's amazing.
So let's talk about Owen Teague. He's another great get for the movie. He's wonderful, of course, in the film, and he's got a resume.
Footnote.
Owen Teague has also been in a lot of movies and got his start as the long-lost son in Bloodline. Was he pretty easy to get onto, or was he more of a challenge, or how was getting him there?
Owen is a dream, and he...
And a dreamboat, I might add.
Yeah, I hope that that's the takeaway of this film. Casting his part of Brad was a little bit more complicated, just in the sense that I didn't then, and even now, really have a sense of a lot of the young actors and
Right.
who's valuable, who's not valuable, who's famous. Like who I didn't really have a sense. So it was actually Meredith Tucker who brought his name up first, in addition to a bunch of other names. And I met with a few guys. We didn't audition that part, and Owen was just so wonderful. The first time I heard Owen read the Brad lines aloud was when we were auditioning the final three Griffins. They read opposite Owen over Zoom, and I remember just the second Owen started to read it. I mean, we had cast him because we thought he was right for the part, but the second he started to read it, we were just like, "Oh, this is perfect! Like this is exactly the right guy." And now I can't even imagine anyone else besides Owen when I think about Brad.
Now, Danny mentioned something about some of the phone scenes, and I wanted to ask you because it can be done several different, especially working with young people. When you had the phone scenes, like when Griffin was talking to Helen, to his mom or whatever, were they doing that live in two different rooms, or did you just do each separately, isolated, and then edit them together later? I know it might be easier for him to be live.
I think that because of the schedule and anything in this movie, and it's very little, but anytime Everett is not on screen was a very high value thing because it was something we could do without Everett. So besides the phone call, like with Kara, who Abby Ryder Fortson plays, his best friend, Everett was pretty much not there because that was this valuable thing of like, you can still shoot 12 hours a day with kids, just not the same kids. So we could wrap Everett and then do Abby's side of the call. There's a moment late in the film that I won't spoil where Griffin has a very emotional phone call with his mother. And at that point, Melanie had wrapped and was back in LA, but she was actually on the phone and stayed on the phone for about an hour doing that with Everett, which was very generous of her.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Now, I want you to put on your writer's head now, because one of the things that was so funny about this movie was the style that Griffin wrote. Very pretentious. I remember there's one line that said, he didn't just say, go wait in the car. He said, go wait in the Lincoln Town car. He always had to put those little touches. How did you get into the mind of how to write like this pretentious kid? Was it just from your youth, or how did that work?
I wanted, again, the play to feel like it was actually written by a 14-year-old. And so what I mean by that is, there is no great play that was written by a 14-year-old. It's not, that doesn't exist.
Right.
So even though I wasn't writing plays as a kid, I think that at that age, and certainly this was true for me, you start off by impersonating things before you really have any maybe voice or life experience. So the idea was that the play is kind of Griffin's idea of what theater is. Or even movies. He mentions Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. He mentions American Beauty. My idea is that a kid, growing up in the suburbs, that his idea of theater is kind of like the mid 20th century kitchen sink, domestic drama. And also Griffin's obsessed with New York. And so his idea of New York through movies and TV. So for people who actually know New York, I live in New York really well, there's a handful of inside jokes that the kid does not know New York. So it's more like a TV movie, old theater version idea of New York City, where everybody's kind of like an Edward Albee, everything is. Right. Yeah, it's like a drawing room, comedy. It's a sophisticated kind of rich domestic drama.
And this is a tiny little tech thing, but I just had to ask because it was hilarious if it really happened. There's one scene when Griffin's very angry near the end of the film. He's outdoors and he screams, "fuck," really loud, and a bird flaps away. Was that a sound effect, or did a bird really fly away? Because he reacted to it.
That's by the lake scene, and it's Brad who screams "fuck." And in some takes early on, Owen was screaming "fuck" at I think it's called Three Lakes. And every time he would scream fuck, birds would run away or dogs would start barking across the thing. So it's either an enhancement of what actually happened, the birds flapping, or just inspired from a take where that actually did happen. I can't remember. But yeah, Owen was scaring all the wildlife away.
You're right. It was Owen. It wasn't him.
Yeah.
And speaking of wildlife and speaking the lake, how was shooting in Virginia? And how did you decide on Virginia?
Yeah, Julia Berman, the main producer, is close with Bobby Hoppe, who's a producer who's worked in LA for different film finance companies. And he and his childhood friend, Fred Bryant, Fred is Richmond based and has been wanting to get production back to Richmond. And they decided to start Cove Side Films, their own production company, together. And this is their first film. And, the film was written to take place kind of in the Northeast, but in a suburb. So it was very easy that we could film, in most states. And shooting in Richmond was great. The crew, like you heard from Danny, the crews were our crew was really, really, really amazing and so hardworking. And the people of Richmond were happy to see us and excited to see us. And, it was August.
Oh, lovely time to be in Richmond. Yeah.
All right. I asked the crew, I was like, what time of day do I have to start applying bug spray? They were like, from the moment you get up in the morning.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Most of the crew, except for maybe 4 or 5 people, were all local hires.
Great.
And Danny is really plugged into the community there. Maria Barkova, production designer. I loved it. It was the crew was really, really, I'm very, very grateful to them.
Did you do anything kind of fun or eat in a good restaurant or anything that you remember from Richmond?
Oh, you know what I really loved that I went to multiple times was the place that is the hidden Italian place that's up a staircase.
Oh, Edo Squid?
Yeah. That was we went there a bunch of times. Yeah.
Oh, good. And when are you coming here again? Speaking of that, I know you mentioned something about setting up a screening. When's the movie going to open here? Do you have any idea?
I do not.
When does it release nationally? Do you know that?
We'll be in select cities in theaters August 29th. In terms of which select cities those are, I should be finding out in the next couple of days. I certainly hope one of them is Richmond, and there has been talk trying to do some kind of an event in Richmond that I, of course, would love to be at. So I'm hoping to be back in Richmond, showing the film again and seeing the cast and crew. So hopefully sometime in September, but nothing to announce yet.
So how was the reception at Tribecca? How was going to that?
It was amazing. They programmed us in their biggest theater at the top of the festival. They just really rolled out the red carpet, and they gave us, the award for best narrative feature, for best screenplay, for jury mention for new narrative director. So we were completely overwhelmed, and they've continued to be really wonderful. Jane Rosenthal and Kara Crusimano, they invited us. They launched Tribecca in Lisbon this past fall and showed Griffin there. So I had to go to Lisbon, which was
great.
Fantastic. And so they continue to be huge champions, and we're extremely grateful to them.
And what's next for you? Are you just spending all your time on this? You got something else you've already written you're waiting to produce?
It's been a really wild ride. The film's reception has been really more than we could have hoped for. And so I'm very much, right now and for the next month, focusing on getting the film out there and just trying to get it as many people to see it as possible. I think that'll make another film after that at some point. That sounds nice, but nothing to announce yet there either.
Okay. So one question I always like to ask everybody when you're not promoting Griffin in summer, what do you like to watch? What are you watching right now on TV or a movie or something?
Yes. While I was in making the film, I wasn't watching anything. And then when I was editing the film, and even for several months after, I've just mostly been watching a huge amount of documentaries, to tell you the truth. That's mostly what I've been watching. So
just to get away from that narrative thing, huh?
I think so. Yeah, it's easier for me to separate myself from it. So I've become obsessed with this Pee Wee Herman documentary that's on HBO right now. I've watched that
that's great.
Twice or 3 times, I think, even though it's 4 hours.
Wow.
Mariska Hargitay has this documentary about mother
Jane
Jane
Mansfield.
Mansfield. Yeah, that I've watched a few times. And I'm just in the middle of watching the new 5-hour Billy Joel HBO documentary. So I've been watching a lot of long documentaries.
Footnote.
I'll include my review of the docs about Pee Wee and Jane Mansfield on the webpage for this show. I have not seen the Billy Joel doc and probably won't.
So that's mostly what I'm doing right now. And then just Griffin and Summer over and over again. So as I check things like closed captions and stuff. So
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen Griffin a lot this year. So I had to watch it recently for some final check stuff, which was interesting. And now we'll have different, events coming up where I'll see it again probably.
Well, Nicholas, I want to thank you so much. It was great to get a chance to meet you and to hear about this film, and best of luck with it.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks so much.
That was director Nicholas Collier, the writer-director of Griffin in Summer, his coming-of-age comedy that follows Griffin, a 14-year-old aspiring playwright trying to bring his artistic vision to life. It was shot in Virginia in 2023 and stars Melanie Lynskey and Owen Teague. It also won Best U.S. Narrative Feature at last year's Tribecca Film Festival and should be getting released nationwide soon. They're also working on a special Richmond premiere for September, and I'll have a link to the movie's trailer on the webpage for this show at tvjerry.com.
Coming soon. In theaters.
Honey, Don't. This dark comedy was directed and co-written by Ethan Cohen. It stars Margaret Qualley, Audrey Plaza, Chris Evans, and Charlie Day. Relay. Riz Ahmed plays a broker of payoffs between corporations and the individuals who threaten them. He breaks his own rules when a new client seeks his protection. Also with Lily James and Sam Worthington. Nisha 2. This animated adventure is the highest-grossing non-English language film in the world and the first to gross more than $2 billion. It's finally playing back in the States. Eden. Ron Howard's latest is based on a factual encounter about a group of outsiders who settle on a remote island, with a cast that includes Jude Law, Ana de Armas, Vanessa Kirby, Daniel Bruhl, and Sydney Sweeney, yet again.
TV and streaming.
The Thursday Murder Club on Netflix. 4 irrepressible retirees spend their time solving cold case murders for fun, but of course they find themselves in a real whodunit. Directed by Chris Columbus and starring Helen Mirren, Pierce Brosnan, and Ben Kingsley. The Terminal List, Dark Wolf, on Prime. This is a prequel to The Terminal List that came out in 2022, following Ben Edwards' journey from Navy SEAL to CIA operative, starring Taylor Kitsch. The Truth About Jesse Smollett, on Netflix. It features interviews with this actor who claims he was attacked, also including police, lawyers, and investigators. The Map That Leads to You, on Prime. Madeline Klein and AJ Appa star in this romance about unexpected love. Long Short Story, on Netflix. A dysfunctional family's shared history, inside jokes, and old wounds are explored in this adult animated comedy with Dave Franco and Abby Jacobson. Eeny Meeny, on Hulu. A reformed teenage getaway driver is dragged back into her unsavory past when a former employer offers her a chance to save the life of her chronically unreliable ex-boyfriend. The Rainmaker, on Peacock, is based on the John Grisham novel. This new series stars Milo Callahan as the lawyer. Thomas Jefferson, on Hulu. The life and achievements of the USA's third president are explored. Invasion returns for the 3rd season on Apple. Next week, I'll be featuring yet another Virginia-made film, Bird in Hand, which will also be showing at this year's Richmond International Film Festival. This is Jerry Williams. Thanks for listening.
For more Sifter, including literally thousands of reviews,
visit tvjerry.com.
That's a wrap.